Welcome to the series premiere of Lighting the Bat Signal, a Batman fan journey. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss our Batman fan origins is comic book artist V Ken Marion. Welcome.
Anthony, what's up? I would say it's happy to be back in the Fortress of Solitude, but I think now it's the Batcave, right? We're first time in the Batcave.
I think so, but you and I do have a grand tradition now of you joining me for the series premieres of my various podcasts. So I'm honored to have you here.
I'm likewise. I'm very honored that you have me come back for the kickoff episodes of all of these. Very exciting, very fun. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, we've become great friends over the past few years at this point. And in addition to that, you are a professional comic book artist. You have drawn these characters, including Batman, in a professional capacity. So I'm really excited to get your perspective on that front as well. So in a little bit, I'll talk about how this podcast came to be and what it's going to be like moving forward in the months ahead. But let's just dive right in here and start talking about our origins as Batman fans and our fandom generally. So for you personally, where does Batman fall in the hierarchy of superheroes?
I mean, he's up there for sure. I mean, I'm probably in the top 5 somewhere. Like, I mean, my personal list is always shifting around, you know? But yeah, I would say it's like Superman, Green Lantern, Flash, Batman, or like the kind of like the, and not in that order, but like just like those are like the core kind of families of superhero stuff that I like in DC. So yeah, I think he's up there. Yeah.
Right on. For me, this is a very easy number 2. My number 1 in comics and all of fiction has always been, and I think will always remain, Superman.
No,
I've
really?
made no secret about that. It's funny. Neither one of us have now cited Batman as our number 1. I hope we don't have anyone listening like he's not even their favorite character. We love Batman.
Batman, yeah.
Honestly, one of the reasons, maybe the main reason why I'm doing this new podcast series is that over the past 5+ years of hosting Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, we've intersected with Batman many times in Superman stories. And there have been instances where we've looked at specific Batman stories that included Superman. And obviously that world's finest dynamic in its many forms is one of the cornerstones of the DC universe. And so time and again, we've run into Batman, and I have been reminded of how much I love the character of Batman. But I've also been reminded of how, truthfully, I've neglected that part of my fandom because I have been so hyper fixated on Superman in much the same way as I had neglected my Superman fandom for a little while before I started that podcast. So the thing that I've learned about myself is if I really want to dive in and focus on a character, I got to do a podcast. So that's why we're here. Now, getting back to this idea of fan origins, do you remember your first experience with the character of Batman, your first exposure?
Yeah, I do actually. And not so much I remember it, but my parents tell me about it, is that, I mean, besides just in general, I'm a big like action figure guy. Like I like loved action figures growing up. And like now as an adult, I buy like the expensive ones and put them around my office, you know? But my very first action figure that I ever got, my aunt got it for me for Christmas, and it was a Batman figure from the Michael Keaton movie. And it was like the one where his arms shoot out to the side to mimic that drop down kind of thing he did. And I think that was my first exposure to the character of Batman. And like when I got, I just thought he looked cool. Like, and I was playing with it, and my parents then showed me the Adam West movie, not the show, but the movie. They had it on tape. And that, I think, was the first live action anything Batman I've ever seen. So that and the action figure were the two. And then comic wise, it was in that same era in there was an issue of Batman that Tim Drake Robin was in, and like Robin's dad was in like a wheelchair and he was getting attacked by gang members. Like I remember the cover very distinctly. I don't remember the number of it, but it was like kind of like this orangey gray cover. I'm not sure if you know what I'm talking about, but those are like my 3 sort of earliest memories of Batman.
Okay, cool. So I was reflecting on this a lot. Unfortunately, I found my parents are not tremendously helpful over these past years as I've been doing these podcasts, in numerous instances where I've been like, hey, do you remember this? We're going to see this movie. Or they almost never do. So unfortunately, that hasn't provided much fuel there. But I was reflecting on this. Now, people who have listened to me podcast for any length of time, you've heard my story about how I got into Superman and this window display at the Galleria Mall, the Heroes World comic book store, promoting the death of Superman, the action figure in the little coffin. that was such a defining seminal moment where it's like, this is this signpost pointing me towards a character. And I can trace so much of my time at comic shops and podcasting back to that moment in front of Heroes World.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I could say I had a Batman equivalent of that moment. I don't. But I was doing the math and just kind of thinking back to that time. And I think, like you cited 3 things, I think there was sort of a trifecta for me as well, all around 1992, because 92 saw the release of Batman Returns.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I remember that very clearly.
Which, going back to what I was saying a moment ago, I remember watching, but for the life of me, I was 5 at the time. I know we're the same age, basically.
I have a story about that. I want to double back that. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, I remember watching it, but for the life of me, I couldn't tell you whether I was in the theater watching that or we were watching it at home on HBO or VHS. I suspect the latter, but I don't know. It's possible we were at the theater.
Yeah.
But so that was 92. Batman, the animated series, started in 92.
Huge. That was huge. Yeah.
And that was a huge part of my childhood. Sounds like it was
huge.
Yours as well. And I think anyone in our age group, and probably even older and younger, it was so significant. And then comic book wise, of course, starting comic books generally with the death of Superman, right after the death was Funeral. And Batman did appear during Funeral for a Friend. So that would have had to have been the first time that I met the character on the page.
Yeah.
So I think Batman Returns, Batman the Animated Series, and Batman's appearance in Funeral for a Friend, I think those 3 all around that same time in 92.
Yeah.
Together, that's kind of my introduction to the character.
Gotcha. So for all that stuff you said, huge for me as well. But the things that I mentioned were actually happened before that. So I knew who Batman was going into all those things. But we're going to Batman Returns. I remember, so I didn't actually see Batman Returns until I was in high school. But I remember so distinctly like the merchandising blitz of that movie, because my parents won't let me watch it, but they bought me all the action figures. Like I had a ton of the Batman Returns figures, like the Arctic Batman, Sub-Zero Batman, the Robin figure that like was never in the movie, right? I had all those figures, had all the happy, like went to the McDonald's to get the Happy Meal stuff, had t-shirts. I had so much Batman Returns merch, and like it was around the cereal. Like I just remember interacting with Batman so much from that movie, but not actually watching the movie until I was like 15, which is like crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So what was it like that when you finally watched it, but you had the context for
all
it?
the toys? Yeah. Yeah. And I had the, like the picture books of the story, so like I kind of knew the story because I had like the children's picture books that were the tie-ins to and stuff. But when I actually watched it, I remember thinking like, wow, Batman's like not in this nearly as much as I thought he was, like, cause he's like barely in the movie. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, when I first watched it in high school, it was more just kind of like, oh, this is nostalgic, even though I had never seen it before, because like so much of the imagery was like a huge part of like when I was 5, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that's wild. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. Yeah. To have had the context for it and then backed into the movie.
Yeah.
Years later. Later, I do want to talk a bit about gaps in our fandom or quote unquote hot takes that we might have. But while we're here, I do just want to say, like, I know how seminal a moment Batman 89 was culturally and individually for so many fans, but that was 2.
Yeah.
Right? So
we're both 87, right?
Yeah, both 87. Yeah. So we're little kids, really don't have an awareness of it at the moment. And so Batman 89 is one of those things where I can appreciate its cultural significance and its significance to the character of Batman from kind of an academic standpoint, historical standpoint, but I didn't live through it the way folks who are a bit older than us did.
Yeah.
And so I always have respect and enjoyment for that movie, but it doesn't occupy as much of a place of prominence in my Bat fandom as I know it does for so many others. And when I look at that series of 4 films, the Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher films, Batman Returns is the one that stands out to me the most because a few years older, I had more of an awareness, a memory of watching it. So I did just kind of want to lay that out there because I know Batman 89, it was so huge and I get it and I respect it, but it's just, for me personally, it just doesn't have that place of prominence.
For me, it's actually Batman Forever because that was the first one I saw. So like, while I remember all the merchandise from Batman Returns, and I had when you talk about cultural impact of like the world, Batman Returns is the one that when I'm a kid, I think of like going to the grocery store with my mom and seeing the cereal and all that stuff. Right. But the first one I saw in theaters was Batman Forever. And I remember just being like stoked that Robin was going to be in it. And I remember thinking like the new suits look cool and like the Bat car. And like, again, I had a ton of the toys from that. I had the Bat Cave, like 3-piece giant like set thing I got for Christmas that year. Like, so Batman Forever, like that one's like high up on my list of like nostalgia. And I still think Val Kilmer is like an awesome Batman.
Well, it might only be a matter of time until we get the Schumacher cut of Batman Forever. There's definitely a strong fan movement for it, and it wouldn't be the first time that we got a director's cut of a movie released. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on that. What you're describing about Batman Forever, what so many fans experience with Batman 89, for me, that was Batman Begins. And we'll talk more about that. But
I mean, Batman Begins was huge for me too. We'll talk about the movies. Yeah,
for sure. But I guess kind of on this note of being just a little bit too young for something like Batman 89 to really kind of take in how impactful it was. I'm curious your experience with Dark Knight Returns, because that came out in 86. So we are literally in this moment in the 40th anniversary year.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, crazy. But that's one, we weren't even alive when that came out. So we grew up in a post Dark Knight Returns world, a post Watchmen world.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get your perspective. I was thinking about this because I don't want to speak for you, but we generally, like, we grew up in a period of time where we read works that were influenced by Dark Knight Returns, by Watchmen. I found for myself earlier on in my fan journey, when I finally did read Dark Knight Returns for the first time, it's not that I disliked it, but I think because I had read so much that had been influenced by it, its significance didn't really hit me in the same way that I'm sure it did for people who were reading it as it was coming out. My appreciation for it and my enjoyment of it has grown considerably over these past few decades. And every time I've gone back to it, and I'm really excited to revisit it. We'll hit it during this 40th anniversry year.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if you've had a similar experience or,
Dude, you're speaking my language completely. Like, I respect the hell out of it for what it did. And for making comics more grown up for sure. But I was actually going to put this in the hot take part that we were going to talk about, but like, it does not hold a place of reverence for me, like, at all, because like, kind of what you're saying of, we grew up in an era of stuff that was inspired by it. So like, it doesn't feel as like, I guess, special in that way, like I can totally academically like say, like, I respect the hell of it. I think the story is amazing, but like, it never grabbed me that way. Like, in general, I don't like the trope of like the old man superhero, like coming back, like, and being all grizzled and angry. It's just not like, it just doesn't hit for me like in that way. And not to say it's good, bad, or whatever. Like, it's just, for me, it just never struck that chord. But like I said, I respect the hell out of it. It's just not, it's not something that I would ever say is like my favorite book of all time or anything like that.
I hear you. And by the way, just so the audience knows, we're going to have a mix of guests on the show. I mean, you and I have similar perspectives, at least at the outset here, but we're going to have folks who are newer to the character. We're going to have folks who've been reading and watching for way longer than us. So we're going to get a mix of perspectives here. But yeah, I think we're aligned in that sense. Did you ever watch the animated adaptation that they did?
I did. Yeah. I watched it once. I don't really remember much about it though.
I too only watched it once, and on a plane, no less. So I feel like I barely even saw it, but I do remember really enjoying it. And so we'll take another look at that when we revisit the material. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say also, like, aesthetically, like, it's so funny because like, I remember when I was really getting into comics and talk about like the things that were influenced by it, but not, when I was really getting into comic books, I was in high school, and it was like Batman Hush was coming out. And to me, Batman Hush is like, that's like my dark, to me, the Hush is like the best Batman book ever. Right. Like, visually, story, everything just hooked me. And I remember being, 15 years old, reading that and reading in Wizard magazine, like, oh, Dark Knight Returns, the best Batman story ever. And I remember going to Barnes and Noble to buy it. And I remember flipping through it and being like, this doesn't like aesthetically just like I didn't buy it because I didn't like, my 15-year-old self was like, I don't like stocky, like, fat Batman. You know what I mean? Like, and now as an adult, I can appreciate what Frank Miller was doing and like the genius behind it, but like, it's still not something that like, that's not how I draw Batman. You know what I mean? It just doesn't hit me in that way where it hits other people, Yeah.
And it's like, I know you just said what a big fan of Jim Lee you are. I know Michael Turner was a big influence as well. Yeah. So it's like, I could see that. And also too, and it's, I don't know, somewhat of a burden for the work to carry that we come to it with the weight of expectation. Yeah. It's not like we're reading it as it's coming out and it's like, oh, what's this new book? Let's check it out. Oh, wow, this is pretty interesting. Instead, you're told like this is the best thing you're ever going to read. Yeah. I will say, I don't know if this is the hottest take because clearly there's a lot of love for Frank Miller's Batman Year One, but I would say I
like Year One better. A lot better, actually.
Maybe the jury's still out for me at this point in time, but certainly for a long part of my Batman fan, I felt the same. And I always felt like, okay, Dark Knight Returns was momentous, but hey, Year One, so I've always kind of been in that camp. The funny thing though with Dark Knight Returns is that the one that we lived through, and I remember vividly because I was working at my local comic shop, Alternate Realities at the time, was Dark Knight Strikes Again, the sequel.
Oh, I thought you were going to say All-Star.
That too.
I like All-Star. I actually do. I mean, people have like weird takes about All-Star, but like, I just think it was like a fun book that like tonally fits with like what Frank Miller already established, but it's got awesome Jim Lee art. I'm like, I don't know. I was there for All-Star.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I revisited All-Star in its entirety, even though it remained unfinished, but entirety in terms of what was actually published. And I actually came away with a more favorable view of it than I think a lot of people have, and that I expected to. With Dark Knight Strikes Again, that's another one that I'm curious to revisit, especially in today's political and societal context, because I think there were some things going on in that might just hit a little bit differently now. So I'm curious, but I've
never read it because I remember the coloring on it was like really strange, and that like again visually just kind of like knocked me out. Like for me, like the art has to hit me like in that way, and that one just didn't. So
yeah, but it was just like a weird, and that's why I wanted to do this pilot episode here, talking about our fandoms and the way in which certain things hit us, depending on our personal histories, the moment in time when we experience it. Because yeah, it's. I had read Dark Knight Returns when Strikes Again came out, but like I said, Strikes Again was the one that like, it was such a big deal. Like they're finally doing a sequel to Dark Knight Returns. And I remember unpacking all those books at this. It was just such a big, I went to a signing at Midtown Comics and got it signed by Frank Miller.
Oh, nice.
I mean, it was a big thing at the time. And then obviously not particularly well received, but like I said, we'll circle back to it, but it was just kind of interesting when we kind of talk about the Dark Knight of it all.
Yeah.
That was the one that, in terms of like what I lived through and really sort of have a firmer memory of. Yeah. It's that, for better or worse.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Dark Knight Returns, like, yeah, again, like, you know, respect it, love it. But it's just not my favorite, you know?
Yeah.
I hope people can understand that. Like not everything's going to be everyone's favorite, you know?
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Well, a couple of things on that note. No, well, number one, I've come to find, you know, social media, it's a bit of a mix, right? In terms of its value and how productive versus toxic it can be and all that. Yeah. But one of the things that I have found, and I've actually found this freeing, is that there's no limit to the range of opinions that you're going to find out there. And it doesn't matter what it is. Even, you know, yes, there are certain things where generally people tend to fall in one camp or another, but there are always outliers. It's something that people love and swear by. You're always going to have a few people who dislike it, and vice versa. So I actually kind of found that freeing. And as always with this new podcast, just as we've always done with the other shows as well, you know, we share our impressions, our feelings, and we hope that people understand where we're coming from on them. So yeah, no, that's an important point. And the other thing too, kind of a bigger picture idea, with this whole idea of a Batman fan journey, similar to Superman as well. We have characters who've been around for almost 100 years, which is crazy, astounding. But there's so much material across media out there. Yeah. That, yes, I'm sure there are a few folks out there who have consumed everything, but I think they are absolutely the exceptions. Yeah. So with all of these things, and this is kind of the approach that I've taken with the Superman show, and I will here as well, that, yeah, I mean, there are going to be things that I might be coming to for the first time or that I'm revisiting. And I understand that there's going to be a mix from our audience as well. And I guess the thing that I've learned is that anything that we talk about, there are going to be people who know it better than we do. There are going to be people who have a similar experience level as us. And there are going to be people who don't know as much about it as we do. So the idea here is to kind of speak to all of these groups, but I did just kind of want to mention that because I think that's an important part of this. Like everybody's coming at this from their own experience level and perspective. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I guess we've already been hitting at this already, but I want to get into it more specifically here. When we talk about our fandoms, I always come back to this idea of tent poles or pillars, the pillars of our fandom of these characters, the stories that maybe they were the first stories we experienced, but maybe not. The desert island, so to speak, of like, if you could only take like certain parts to like the things that like kind of encapsulate in your head what that character is. Yeah. And that really shaped the way you see the character. Yeah. And that's not to say that something else can't come along and challenge or change that, but generally the stories that you really hold up as, hey, this shaped the way I see the character. Yeah. For Batman, I guess, what are some of those stories that really come to mind?
Comic book wise or just in general?
In general.
In general. I mean, the movies obviously have such a huge impact. I mean, culturally, but also with me. Like, and I would say the whole gamut of the movies, like every single one of them, you know, and same thing with the cartoon show, Batman the Animated Series. For sure, those huge influence in there. And then when we go into the comics, I would say, I mean, Hush was the first book I ever read monthly. And so in Batman, and that like huge impact on me. Like, so when I think comic wise, when I think of like the three big runs of Batman that like for me as a fan kind of cement in my head, like what I've read and what I think of, it's Hush, it's the Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo run. I mean, the Court of Owls is like the highlight, but like that whole 50 issue run is in it. And then the one that people don't really talk about a lot is the Grant Morrison one that was in like, I think it was called Batman R.I.P., but it was like much bigger than just R.I.P. It was like basically his whole run too. That it came out when I was in college, and that's like when I was interning at DC, and like I was really hooked on like every month, like what's going to happen. There was a mystery as who the villain was. It was I can't even remember the villain's name. It was like
the Black Glove.
Yeah, Black Glove. There we go. Like who was the Black Glove, and like it was like that was a huge impact on me as well. Like when I think about my Batman fandom, and like again, if you go with those artists like Jim Lee, Greg Capullo, Andy Kubert, Tony Daniel, like that kind of milieu is like where like visually I think of the character a lot too.
Okay, right on. Yeah, I mean, I'll say for myself, so we do have some overlap here. So yeah, I mean, Batman the Animated Series was huge.
Yeah, huge.
And I think, I know I'm excited to revisit and rewatch that in its entirety because, I mean, I watched it as a kid. And then if memory serves, I rewatched them when I was in high school when they put the DVDs out.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going back 20 years now.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time. It's funny. Last night, just to kind of get myself in the Bat mindset, I pulled up a couple of episodes. I watched I Am the Night and I watched Perchance to Dream, which Kevin Conroy has cited as his favorite.
Mad Hatter one?
Yeah, where he wakes up in a world where his parents are alive.
Yeah,
it was great. And but I just kind of wanted to get back into that mode. Next year is the 35th anniversary of the premiere of the show. So
That's crazy. I remember where I was, by the way, watching that.
Where?
I was at my aunt and uncle's house with my parents, and like dad was super excited about the Batman show. I think the first episode it was the Man Bat episode, right? It was the first episode that aired. Yeah, I remember that very clearly, being in my aunt and uncle's house watching that. That's
awesome. I have very specific memories of being in elementary school, and now this is a few years later, but when they did the new Batman Superman Adventures. Mm-hmm. So when they did that hour-long block of Superman the Animated Series and Batman, and it was a mixture of episodes, but at that point they had come back and they did the new look Batman season.
Do you have a preference what look you like better? Because I do have a very clear which one.
You go first.
I like the original one better.
Okay,
like way better. I like the blue inside the cape. I like the more color to it. I like what Robin looks like better than when they bring in Tim Drake and he's all red. Like I hate the all red. He needs green on him. You know. The only thing I like about when they came back is that Nightwing was in it, which I thought was cool. But overall, the look, I like the first look way better.
So logically, analytically, I agree 100%. Okay. But where I was going with this is that I have these specific memories of being at my grandparents' place and watching that block of the new Batman Superman Adventures and the new look Batman specifically.
Yeah.
So those are a little bit more seared in my brain.
Nostalgia.
And that's probably like if I close my eyes, sometimes that's what I go to first. But if I'm really looking at them clear-eyed, I do prefer the original version. But that's one of those things. And even just last night watching a couple of episodes, it just struck me. And I'll have a lot more to say about this when we revisit the show properly. But I don't think I've ever fully appreciated like just how formative that was.
Yeah.
And what I'll get to in a second here, I mean, it took me years before I started reading Batman comics on a regular basis. And he only had so many movies. They're years apart. Yeah. But that animated series on a regular basis was my main dose of Batman.
It came out every day. Do you remember that? It wasn't like once a week. It was like every day after school. It was on TV. Yeah.
And Power Rangers, those were huge for us.
Yeah, it was. I mean, with Batman, did you have the toys? Like the cartoon? Yep. Yeah, I had it. Oh yeah. I had the Batmobile, the plane. Like, yeah, it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. So Batman, the animated series is huge. On the film front, I'm at this point now where I look at really all of them. And I find something interesting, entertaining, valuable about them.
Yeah.
Even something like Batman and Robin, which is generally not well regarded.
That's part of my hot takes too. Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, no, I came around on that because I did a Patreon show a couple of years ago where I went through all the non-Superman movies. And so that was an opportunity within recent memory to revisit the Batman stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I came away from that. I'm like, if you go into that with the mindset of the Adam West TV series,
100%. Yeah.
Well, no, this tracks as an update of
that.
It's
like a 90s version of the 60s show.
Yeah.
Is what it is. Yeah. And honestly, like that, Joel Schumacher, he's a good director. Like if you like Lost Boys is a seminal movie, right? And like, Phantom of the Opera, I just watched with my wife recently, and I didn't know he had directed that. And I remember watching it with her and being like, I'm like, this kind of has like Batman vibes to it. And then at the end, it's directed by Joel Schumacher. I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah. So, I mean, he was definitely doing what the studio asked him to do, which was do like an updated version of the 60s TV show. And, that's just where we were culturally. Like,
yeah. And look, for years and years, I was as dismissive of Batman and Robin as the next fan.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, going back and rewatching it in that specific context, I'm like, oh no, okay. I get what they were going for. And with that mindset, one of the things that I have found doing these podcasts that has been very refreshing is that almost everything that I've gone back to that I didn't love the first time around, I've come away with a better impression of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're coming at it without the weight of any expectations. And if anything, your expectations are lower because it's like, oh, I didn't like this before.
Yeah.
And in almost every instance, I've come away enjoying things. And so that's why with this podcast, we'll be going back to things that I have always been a fan of, and we'll be revisiting and celebrating and all of that. I'll be filling in gaps in my fandom. I want to talk more about that because that's a big piece of this puzzle. But then also reconsidering things that I didn't love the first time around. And I'm keeping that open mind is a big thing. I mean, for anyone who's new to listening to me, I mean, I argue with myself a lot, and you might find that I do an episode on one thing and I have an initial impression, and then like a few years later, I do another episode and I have a completely different.
Yeah.
But it keeps it fun and interesting. So all that to say, even though I've come around on Batman and Robin, not one of the tent poles of my fandom, so don't put me down for that one. But Batman Begins is absolutely, in terms of the film side, and that came out. I was 18, right after high school. It was a summer between high school and college. And it was a great summer for movies. Like 40-Year-Old Virgin came out then. I think Revenge of the Sith was that. There was a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But I remember going to see that with my crew from high school. We went to Movieland on Central Avenue in Yonkers, New York, which is now our local Alamo Draft House and our go-to spot for movies. Which, by the way, when that Alamo opened, it was a beautiful thing because I had spent so many hours watching movies at that old theater, and then it closed and there was nothing there for years. Yeah. And then Alamo came. I was like, here I am watching movies at the same spot.
Do you still go to that one now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're not as close to it as we used to be. So it's not that bad, but it's a little bit of a hike. It's not the most convenient theater, but we make the trip for it because we like the experience. But so I remember going to see Batman Begins, and I love the entire Nolan trilogy, but Batman Begins just crystallized that character for me.
It hit.
It just hit. And I was thinking about this, and I don't think it'll be too long before we do our dedicated Batman Begins episode. Because as we move forward, I want to start with the things that are the most important to me. So I think we'll get there sooner rather than later. But it's funny, moments like Bruce having that conversation with Alfred on the plane about, as a man, I can be killed, but as a symbol, I can be incorruptible, everlasting. If I were to watch it cold today at almost 40 years old, I don't know. Maybe part of me would feel like, oh, this is a little bit heavy-handed, spelling it all out. Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah. But at 18 years old, that speech, that encapsulation of the character, everything just clicked for me. I cannot stress 100%. How much I love that movie.
No, because I was going to ask you who your favorite Batman was and what your favorite Batman movie was, which I want to go through later. But I've got a couple of funny stories about Batman Begins. Like, I remember I was hyped to see it because that's when I was like just kind of discovering comic books and like reading Hush and all this stuff, right? And I remember seeing that trailer and I'm like, oh, and up until that point, Batman and Robin was the last thing that we saw. And that was kind of the public consciousness of like what Batman was. And I was reading Hush and all these comics at the time and thinking like, no, Batman could be so much cooler than that. And so when that movie came out, I remember going to see it with my friends. Only one of my friends, it was me and one other friend that went to see it. And I remember when we came out, I'm like, dude, that was like so good. And he was like, yeah, man, that was like really good. And I remember going home and my mom was like, how was the movie? And I was like, it was like really, really good. Like it wasn't like a superhero movie. It was like a good movie. Like they explain like why he has like the fins on his arm. I couldn't believe that like they broke down the costume into like why he wears every part of the costume in like a way that made sense, you know? And I remember that following Christmas when the DVD came out, my grandparents were visiting us at Christmas and I was like, let's all watch Batman Begins. Cause my parents hadn't seen it. And my grandparents definitely didn't see it. Cause my grandparents were not people that liked fantasy at all. They were like, they watched baseball and that was it. And like, they saw a commercial for like Harry Potter. They'd be like, what is this nonsense? You know? And so I remember putting on Batman Begins and like my grandpa, who was like a World War II veteran, who was like, you know, just like this tough as nails dude who had no time for any of this foolishness, was like locked into this movie. And when it was over, he was like, that was a really good movie. Like, and it just, and that was the thing that like crystallized for me. Like, this is a good movie. Cause if my grandpa like could sit through a Batman movie and like be engaged and like really care about where it happens at the end of it, like that is a sign of a good movie, just beyond it being Batman, you know, like that is, I mean, to spoil what I was teed up before, like Batman Begins is my favorite Batman movie, like hands down.
Right on. No, yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. We were talking about being too young, you know, not living through the Batman 89, the Batmania craze.
Yeah.
But in a similar way for folks who might be younger than us, who maybe got into this world with something like Arrow on television, for example, it's like that so follows in the footsteps of something like Batman Begins. Yeah. I mean, it had such an impact. And yet to sort of take that real world approach, I won't use the term grounded because I know people kind of roll their eyes, I think, at this point, but that real world approach, those explanations, like you're saying,
it was not grounded or real, it's just earnest. Like we're taking it seriously. Like we're taking this as like a serious story that's like deserves to be taken seriously. Like that's more like what I crave with all this stuff, and not for it to be like realistic but believable in the sense that like you believe in the emotions of the characters, you believe what they're going through, you believe in their journey, and you're not winking at the camera being like, isn't this kind of stupid? Like, you know, like that's what I'm looking for with all this stuff, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, but and I think that was the line that those films and Batman Begins in particular were able to walk of, providing this real world accounting of, okay, well, what would a Batmobile be like in the real world? Well, it's this repurposed, painted military vehicle. It's like, okay, we can wrap our heads around that. But at the same time, that emotional core and so many of the trappings of the mythology, like everything was there, and it was earnest, and it wasn't ashamed of what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think it was just this great balance. And I can't speak highly about it enough. I mean, it's funny, this idea of hot takes. I love The Dark Knight. Mm-hmm. I truly do.
I do too.
But Batman Begins is my favorite of the trilogy.
Yeah,
and
same.
I was really thinking about how do I want to phrase this, because it's not that I want to come on here guns blazing being like Dark Knight is overrated, but I think it's sometimes overrated in the way that conversation about it overshadows Batman Begins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's why I always want to say, hey, Dark Knight is amazing, but especially for a truly Batman-centric chapter in this trilogy, Batman Begins is fantastic. And then kind of by the same token, I'm also a defender of The Dark Knight Rises. I feel
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people dump on that one. And look, are there some things in there, especially how much time has passed or how did Bruce get back to Gotham? There are a few things that maybe are a little bit of a head scratcher, but the emotional core of that and the payoff to everything that was set up at the beginning of this trilogy about him becoming a symbol that's bigger than one man and the ending that it gives him.
It's great, dude.
Yeah, man.
It's good. They full circle ended the story in like a way that a lot of these superhero things don't, you know, and like they kind of ended it at like the peak of Nolan's popularity too. Cause usually with these franchises, it's like they go until they're not like popular anymore. You know what I mean? And like Transformers was a good example of that, where it's like, no, Nolan, like he closed that loop and told that story and it was really well done. And like going back to what you said about the Batman 89 versus when we were in high school watching this, the cultural shift of it, what I think we're talking about now, there wasn't really a Batmania when Batman Begins came out. It was almost more this apprehensiveness to it. It was almost like, because I remember that summer I was at pre-college at Pratt, like a pre-college program before. So it was like this like month-long program in between school semesters that like those credits would transfer when I went to college. And I remember like with the kids there being like, oh, Batman Begins is really good. We gotta go see it. We should see it again. And a lot of kids there were like, Batman's like stupid. Like, why do you like, it's like this like campy. Like, why would you want to watch it? And I'm like, no, this is like really good. Like, it was almost like that movie had to like undo the cultural perception of what superheroes in general were. And like you're saying at this point now, like if you're like 20, 25 right now and your perception of superheroes are things like Arrow and the Snyder movies and the Marvel movies and all like that stuff, like that is not how we grew up. Like people did not take these movies seriously at all. They really were these like campy kind of like, oh, let's make these like goofy movies for kids and sell toys. And like Batman Begins was the first time it was like, no, we're going to take this like literally culture shifted the entire perception of what superheroes were. And to the point now where like fans get really upset if movies don't take the characters seriously, you know? And it was just, it's very funny to see. But like I was saying, in conjunction with that, there wasn't this huge media blitz of Batman Begins. It was almost like they were like forcing themselves to like even get out there. Like there was like no toy. I mean, there were, but there was like very little. There were no Happy Meal tie-ins. There was none of this like extra stuff that like we had become used to at that point with these franchise movies.
Yeah, it's funny as you're saying that. Like I'm reflecting on my own experience, and yeah, I don't remember having a strong sense of anticipation about the movie. I mean, I guess I remember generally looking forward to it, and like it was an outing with my buddies. We were going to see the movie, but I do remember kind of piggybacking off of what you're saying. It's like of sitting there and being like, wow, like this is like way better than I expected it to be. Yeah. And not like any kind of Batman movie or superhero movie. And look, credit where credit's due. At this period of time, we had the Blade movies, the beginning of the X-Men franchise, movies, Spider-Man and all that. But still, this was in its own category. And so I do remember, not going into it with, I think, a ton of expectation or anticipation, and then really being blown away that like, oh, this is Batman, and this is how you could do a superhero movie. Yeah. So, because the X-Men, I feel like we're probably the closest in terms of like, we're taking it seriously, but the X-Men also, there were, at least at me as a kid, I felt like at the time there was this delineation with like Spider-Man. While those movies are great, they are still really campy and fun and comic booky, right? They're not this like super earnest take on the character. And like the X-Men movies were, but they had none of that like comic book like aesthetics. They were literally just people with powers. Like they didn't have the suits or anything. So like when Batman Begins came out, it was like almost like, no, you could take the seriousness of the X-Men, but also add in the comic book stuff to make it the character that you visually recognize, which is like, that to me was like where it like kind of shifted my whole perspective as a kid. It's like, well, you can do this seriously and you can add all the costumes and stuff in it and make it work, you know? 100%. No, I think that's the thing. I think that's the difference. It's been so many years since I've gone back through that X-Men franchise, but I do think that's a key distinction because yes, the X-Men movies, and that first one especially, took it quote unquote seriously. Yeah. But they had to tone down like crazy the comic book elements. Like you said, the fact they weren't in the costumes. Whereas with Batman, you still had the feel and the trappings. Yeah. But with this real world setting. So like I said, I think just like a perfect balance. So Batman Begins, very much so one of those pillars of my fandom. Same. Now, shifting over to the comics, I can't believe we're almost 40 minutes in here, and this is the first time that I'm saying the words No Man's Land.
Ooh, I've never read No Man's Land. I feel like I have to because I've heard you talk about it so much.
So, like I said, in the comics, and I talked about this in a little trailer for the podcast, but basically for most of the 90s, as I was reading comics, I was almost exclusively just reading the Superman stuff and JLA. And so my experience with Batman in the comics would be when he popped up in the Superman books, or then on a regular basis with JLA. I don't remember offhand exactly when I hit stuff like Year One, Dark Knight Returns, and Long Halloween. It might have been before No Man's Land. Obviously, they were all out and collected before then, but in terms of when I got to them, it might have been before No Man's Land, or it might have been out. I'm not sure. But hands down, the comic book storyline that made me a regular Batman reader and really cemented my Batman fandom in a different way, and obviously it's coming years before Batman Begins, was No Man's Land, this year-long storyline where Gotham is devastated by an earthquake and then cut off from the rest of the country by the government and is carved up into these factions by the villains and the GCPD and the Bat family. And we'll be talking about that in this first year of the podcast as well. But I remember a lot of things from it, but I think just kind of as a preliminary matter, I can't think of any other experience as a comic book reader where something wore me down in such a good way because, like I said, I was not a Batman reader. You might recall, even if you haven't read it, but the books during that year had a very distinctive trade dress. The covers,
I do remember that. Yeah.
Right on down the side of all of the books, you had the yellow like caution tape with No Man's Land. So they really popped on the shelves. And this was a point in time where you had 4 monthly Batman books plus like the quarterly book, Batman Chronicles.
And like Nightwing and Robin too, like that all tied in, right?
Yeah. So like Nightwing, Robin, Catwoman, Azrael, they all tied in to some extent. They weren't necessarily for the entire year, but they all had tie-in issues. But my point is like there's a lot of these No Man's Land books with this very distinctive trade dress.
Yeah.
And I remember just seeing them at the comic shop every week and just being kind of intrigued. And then hand in hand with that, Wizard, pour one out for Wizard. When it was good, it was great.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't so great and then it was gone. But when it was good, it was great. But they were constantly covering it, or at least that's my memory of it. So I remember seeing it and reading about it.
Yeah.
And no joke, it's like, you know when it finally it was literally the last arc, Endgame. I remember the cover. I think it was part 1 of Endgame with Joker playing chess and the pieces were members of the Bat family.
Yeah.
And it came out during and was set during the holiday season. And that was the last straw. I was like, I have to find out what's going on here. And then over a period of weeks, I guess, between alternate realities and One If by Cards, Two If by Comics, now American Legends, which is about across the street from the Alamo Draft House. Comic Book Heaven, another store in the area. Probably Dragon's Den. All these late grade comic shops.
Book stores. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the landscape of comic shops in Westchester changed. But through all of those stores, I acquired the entire run in single issue back issues. And caught up and read it. And then, of course, they would be collected, and it's been collected in various forms over the years. But
do you still have them, the single issues?
I don't, unfortunately. I've had multiple rounds of pruning of my collection over the years, but that just pulled me in as a regular reader of Batman comics, and I love that storyline. We'll talk more about it, but just obviously Batman's war on crime, but his war on crime in Gotham, right, is such an indelible part of the Batman story. And so this was an event that really took the city apart. Yeah. And a big piece of it is that Batman abandons the city initially, and then he returns and he has to win back Gordon's trust. And he talks about how he lost his reason, his purpose, and he had to find it again. One of the other things about it that was actually inventive at the time, it's been employed by other comic book franchises since then, but rather than having each creative team tell one part of an arc, which was the way the Batman books had operated and the way the Superman books operated during the Triangle Era, instead they would have, during No Man's Land, they would have one creative team tell an arc over all of the titles for that month, for example.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So each arc was much more cohesive.
So the same artist and writer would do the 4 issues that came out that month.
Exactly.
That had to be a scheduling nightmare.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure from an editorial perspective. But, the first arc I think was called No Law and a New Order. And I want to say it was Bob Gale and Alex Maleev. I'm a little rusty on the specifics. Okay. But yeah, like they did that 4-part arc that ran across each of the core 4 Batman titles.
Yeah.
So I think the way that it was structured, and it's funny, I wouldn't have been that conscious of this at the time, but it probably felt refreshing to me compared to what I was experiencing with the Superman books, where it was not that approach. It was, you're getting part 1 in Action Comics and part 2 in Adventures of Superman, and each one has its own creative team and all of that.
Also a scheduling nightmare.
Yeah, that too. And I love the Triangle Era, of course, but I just thought it was an inventive way to approach it and just a really compelling hook for a story. Mm-hmm. And I just loved it. And that made me a regular reader. And so I read the Bat books. And then I extended to the Bat family books, especially Nightwing. Big fan of that.
Me too.
The Chuck Dixon, Scott McDaniel era in particular. You and I were talking off mic about that. But I would say from so that was 99. So from No Man's Land in 99 through, I would say like Infinite Crisis period. That's my golden age as a Batman comics reader. And at that point, then I switched to reading in trades. Mm-hmm. And after that came the Grant Morrison run, which is the next pillar of my fandom, like for yourself as well. But as far as having the Batman books on my pull list and just reading on that regular monthly basis, that stretch of time. And so post No Man's Land, you have Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker. They did the Bruce Wayne murderer and fugitive storyline.
Okay.
They launched Gotham Central. You had Brubaker on Catwoman initially with Darwin Cook.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that period of Batman.
Everything you're saying is like triggering like images of like back issue hunting when I was like in high school. You know what I mean? Like the Bruce Wayne murder. So where does No Man's Land line up with Hush? Is there like a couple arcs between them, or is it years between them, or is it really relatively close?
I forget offhand what year Hush was.
Hush was 2003, I think.
So yeah, it's a few years because No Man's Land ran across all of 99.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So then we get into the Greg Rucka, Ed Brubaker era, and then Hush. But yeah, so that's the sweet spot for me, and kind of the most core memories that I have as a regular Batman reader of the comics.
Yeah.
It's funny because people listening to this, there are folks who, you know, have probably been reading since the Bronze Age, or maybe even the Silver Age, and they're like, you started in 99?
Yeah.
But then there might be other people who are like, oh, I started with the new 52.
That's old.
You're an old man.
Yeah. No, for sure. I'm getting that now at conventions, man, where people will come up and they'll, you know, be talking about whatever, and they'll be like, yeah, I got into DC with the new 52. Like I was in high school when that came out. And like that, I know that longtime fans kind of don't like the new 52, but that's an era that I think was really important for the time. And like, it has made an impact. I will say, like 15 years later, wherever we are now, like there's definitely like a huge group of people that like, that's their childhood. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely. So No Man's Land, and then that whole Brubaker Rucka era is just, that's monumental for me. And then the Grant Morrison run, which, and that spanned multiple titles, the main Batman book and Batman and Robin and Batman Incorporated.
Yeah.
And I hold that up as my single favorite era or run by an individual creator easily.
Did you like the, when Dick Grayson was Batman and that with Frank Whiteley, that arc, that run, that was really cool.
Yeah. With Damian as his Robin.
Yeah. That was a really fun series. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, I've had a journey with Grant Morrison because for a long time I was sort of in the camp of, you know, I like his more straightforward superhero stuff like JLA, but other work is just a little too out there for me.
I mean, JLA is not that straightforward though.
Well, that's true, but relative for Morrison, relatively, but you're right. But over the years, man, I just become more and more of a Morrison acolyte. I mean, the biggest turnaround I had was on Final Crisis. I mean, for years I was like, I can't make sense of this. And now it's like, I love it.
Yeah.
But the Batman run, I read that in trade, and maybe somewhat piecemeal at the time, but then a few years ago for a different podcast, I actually sat down and went through all the trades and we talked about it. And I absolutely loved it. And I'm really excited to now go back to it, because that was the first time that I really read it in full. And I have all the Omnis now. They're on my shelf, and we'll get there eventually and I'm going to crack them open. And I know DC, they're actually putting out a new expanded version of the Black Casebook, which is the curated collection of pre-crisis stories that inspired Morrison.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was out in softcover years and years ago, and then long out of print. You can't find this thing.
Yeah.
And now they're doing a new hardcover that I think is expanded. So I'm excited to dive back in.
I think I might have had that at one point when because I was interning at DC at this time, and a little peek behind the curtain for people back then anyway. I don't think they do this anymore, but back then everybody in the office would get free comps of everything that was published every week.
Whoa.
And so, I mean, I didn't because I was an intern, but like if you're there for, you know, a year, you don't want this stuff anymore. It's just piling up. So like people would just put their stuff out in the hallway, and I would go through and just kind of pick things. And so I would say the vast majority of my collection at one point was stuff that I just like gobbled up from like people that didn't want it at DC. I don't think they do it anymore though. I think they've cut that because literally it was just cluttering up the offices, because people at a certain point, like you just, you know.
It's funny. So back in, I think this was 2018, I was in California, and I got to visit the DC offices in Burbank, and I got a little tour by our mutual friend, editor Paul Kaminsky, and he took me around, and I feel like there were multiple people who like were offering me Omnis, and I'm like, I gotta get on a plane. Like I can't.
That's so funny you say that, because I had a very similar experience back in like 2019. I want to say 2020, like 2019. I was out there for my wife at the time was working for a law firm out there. So we went out for a Christmas party. And so I was like, oh, well, I'll go visit the DC offices. And like my editor that I was working with at the time was Michael McAllister, and he was taking me around to see everyone. And I ran into another editor at the time, one of the editors who was working on Batman. And he was like, He's like, hey, it's good to see you. And I was talking to him and he's like, hey, do you want this? Do you want this? Here, take it all. And I was like, dude, I don't really want it. Like, I've got to go on a plane. Exactly. But it was like, it's funny how, cause like it becomes cumbersome if it's like everything you publish, you know what I mean? Like literally everything, you know? So
I know it's so fun. It broke my heart to be like, no, thank you. But you know, I realized if I could have, I would have, but no, that whole Morrison era, like I said, such a fan of. I mean, I think the headline of it is it's the introduction of Damian Wayne, but there's so much going on there. It's such a beautiful, immersive meditation on Batman and Batman mythology. And it's so funny to me because I've spent a lot of time reading and thinking and talking about DC's various crises and these continuity altering events and the omniverse and all that business. But Morrison had such an elegant approach because Morrison's view of this was all these Batman stories you've read across eras, they've all happened. They're all part of this weird tapestry of a life that he's had. And so it's all kind of in play.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just worked. Even the take on Joker, not to knock something like Three Jokers, which is an interesting story and we'll talk about it. But the whole idea of, like, oh, there's been three of them. It's like, well, I much prefer the Morrison approach of, no, Joker's just constantly evolving and challenging Batman in new ways. I'm like, perfect. It was just so simple and clean.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this just makes sense. So,
you
know, and there's a moment, it's a quote that comes up a couple of times in Morrison's run, but I have cited it in numerous instances. And it's one of those things that, like, when I think of Batman, it's one of those core ideas that I think of where Batman says, the first truth of Batman, the saving grace, I was never alone. And it's a beautiful thing because, of course, we have this iconic imagery of him in that alley with his slain parents in front of him, alone in that moment. But depending on which era and iteration we're talking about, but generally speaking, who enters the picture? Gordon, Alfred. Leslie Tompkins, Alfred is there. And then as we move forward, he has this entire explosion of a Bat family. So just this idea of this kind of inherent loner, yet there are all of these people who have helped him and who he has inspired. And it was just a beautiful idea. But that first truth, the saving grace, it's something that we can't overlook when we think about the character Batman. So yeah, no, I mean, I love the Morrison. I'm excited to get back to that.
Nice. Yeah. That was definitely a nostalgic for me for college. That was my college era when I was like really, really into the peak of my buying comic books was from college up to maybe 3 years into the New 52. That was like that chunk of time where I was like locked in every week going to Midtown Comics. So that, and Batman was at the top of my list because I was like, I want to know who's Black Glove, who's, it was good mystery elements. And because Batman's a detective, I feel like the stories lean that way, but that really hooks you with like wanting to read the next issue. Like Hush was that way for me. I was like, I couldn't wait to find out what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I'm excited to read the Morrison run in Omni form because like I said, I read it in trade and so I'm like cobbling them together and it was fine. It was a perfectly readable experience, but to sort of have them in these few volumes should be cool. So
cool
for me, Batman the Animated Series, Batman Begins, No Man's Land, Morrison. I would say those are kind of the four cornerstones of my fandom, but obviously there's a lot more beyond that I've loved. And, you've mentioned Hush a bunch of times. And Hush was huge for me. Not as big for me as it was for you, I think, because I was already so in with No Man's Land and Rucka and Brubaker. For me, it was the other thing too. And I know when I say this to you, you're like, what? But I just like, I missed the boat on Jim Lee on X-Men.
I mean, that's fair because so for me, like I've gone back to X-Men, like when I was in high school after I found out who Jim Lee was, but like Batman for me, it was like, that was really my introduction of Jim Lee as I know who this guy is and I'm connecting the name to, like when I read that Batman book, to me, it was like, oh, this looks like that free comic that I got with my X-Men figure from KB Toys. You know what I mean? Like, cause that was like the extent of my knowledge of Jim Lee X-Men up until that point was the freebie giveaway of X-Men #1 they gave when you bought the action figures, So for me, it was more like a nostalgia. At the time, it was more like, oh, this is like how I remember comics being when I was like a kid, when I was really 15 thinking about back to when I was like, 7 or whatever. So, but yeah, that just hit for me.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the funny thing is that when they announced Jim Lee, I mean, I knew the name, but it's just, I really hadn't read his work before. And I mean, we're early high school at this point or mid high school, but I was intrigued. I mean, I think for me, the even bigger hook was Jeff Loeb, whose Superman work I loved. And so I was really excited at the prospect of him doing this Batman story. And it was billed as this big deal. And they had to make sure Jim Lee had like half the issues in the can before they would start releasing them, which ended up being a wise choice. But I mean, I remember this was just kind of central time for me working at my local comic shop. And I remember we had, each of us who worked there, we had a little tag for our pick of the week. We could highlight whatever we wanted. And I think for most of the run of Hush for that year, I just left my pick on Batman. So I was having a great time with it. And I think as a mystery, I have some quibbles with it, but the art is out of this world. And I do think, and maybe part of this is informed by my experience behind the counter, making recommendations to people, things like that. Like that is one of those books you can 1000% give to somebody. And it's, the villains are in the mix. The other members of the Bat family are in the mix. You get the Batman Catwoman. Like there's so many of these core aspects of the Batman mythology rendered beautifully that I think it has been an entry point for so many people, or whether to comics or to Batman. And I think it works beautifully in that respect. So I do have a lot of love for it, even though it doesn't quite rise to the level of kind of pillar of my fandom. But I do love that original Hush.
I want to shout out Jim Lee too on this, because I feel like, because I've thought a lot about this in recent years, like Jim, like I think on the surface level, it's like, oh, it's his style that people like, you know what I mean? Like the angularness, the cross hatching, all that stuff. But to me, like what really makes Jim stand out, like above almost every other artist. And like, to me, there's this real 3-dimensionality to like what he draws. And if we compare him to Frank Miller, let's say, right? Frank Miller's a great artist, very graphic, like in terms of like black and white and shadow, but like Jim, like he draws this whole sort of complete world with like the backgrounds and the foreground, middle ground, background, and like everything sort of moving left to right, but also front to back in a way that like not even Frank Miller does. Like when you think about like All-Star Batman, for example, there's this double page spread of Batman Robin riding on top of a train. And it's like, no one else would draw it. Like envision this, like this. I mean, I try to do it. Every artist tries to, but it's like, he just is able to capture this sort of full and complete image from like every angle that makes it feel like this living, breathing thing. And like his style is not photorealistic. It doesn't, at no point do you think you're looking at a photo, but it feels like there's actual movement and people in a real environment. And it's like very few other artists are able to do that in a way that Jim does. And that I think went a long way with me at the time, being like, man, I want to draw like this. And like this just overall hits in it's the experience of reading this, like is hitting in a way that's so different from all the other comics I'm reading at the time, you know?
Yeah, no, it's fascinating to hear you break it down like that, because I think that's the sort of thing that for someone I can't draw at all. And so when I look at it, it's like I wouldn't be able to put that into words. For me, it's ineffable, but I think it's having the effect on me, right? That's probably what I'm responding to beyond just like, oh, this looks cool, but there are techniques at play. So it's really cool to have you explain that. Now, like as we're recording that, we're in the midst of the sequel, which I know has garnered a mixed reaction at best, but we'll approach that too when the time comes. But that original Hush, I think is one of those things that, you know, that stands up and certainly came at a pivotal point for us.
Yeah.
Also, just a quick note, and this too will be its own discussion down the road, but I know you and I are both fans and defenders of the Zack Snyder vision of the DCE.
You never get away from it. You'll never get away from it.
We'll never get away from it. It's so funny because on the other show a year or two ago, like we went through the entire Snyder trilogy again, and we did our dedicated episodes on Man of Steel and BVS and Justice League. And I remember feeling at the time like, okay, like I don't know that I would be doing another like BVS episode at some point. It's like now with this show, it's like, I don't know, maybe now we do it again from this perspective. I don't want to speak for you, but I think, you know, you and I kind of fall into this camp of, you know, we look at the movies and it's not like it's just like blind devotion to them. We have things we like, we have things that maybe we would want done differently. But we enjoy the films and this presentation of the characters, fair to say overall.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I just so the audience knows kind of like where I'm coming from on this, and I'll keep it quick, but I would just say when it comes to kind of the Snyder iteration of the DC universe, I will never tell you that you have to love it or that it's the only way to present the characters, as long as you don't tell me that I shouldn't like it or that it's not a valid take on the characters. Deal? Deal, audience?
That's valid. That's valid.
Okay. But Batfleck in particular, like I loved, and it's funny because I had my journey with all of those films, and especially BVS. Like my position shifted on that over the years. But even from that initial viewing where I kind of came out of the theater, a little bit mixed, I really just gravitated towards the Batman side of things and the journey that he went on, and that whole speech to Alfred about if there's even a 1% chance that he could wipe us out, we have to treat it as an absolute certainty. It's funny. And obviously that's not, at the end of the day, not quote unquote right for Batman, because he has this change of heart. He comes to see Clark as a person, not the creature.
Yeah. And
I love that journey that he goes on. But on that note of that logic and that speech to Alfred, one of the things that I realize in our other podcast discussions and the Superman stories and all of that, I think I'd like to think that I living up to the ideals of Superman, but I find that there are a lot of times in these stories where Batman will express something and I'm like, yeah. Like he's like when we went through the Bendis stuff where Superman revealed his identity to the world. I personally did not like that. And Batman did not like that. I remember reading those stories and Batman's like, this is a mistake. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, so it's just interesting. I feel like I kind of identify with Batman in a lot of these instances. So.
That's so funny. I want to ask you, like, I mean, we went over our favorite Batman movie as being, we both say Batman Begins is our favorite Batman movie. Who's your favorite Batman actor?
For me, in my heart, it's Bale. Like that's quote unquote my Batman. But at the same time, look, even though I made my peace with Batman and Robin, George Clooney is not my favorite, but really all of the other ones, I've enjoyed the performance and like they're compelling, valid takes on the character. Yeah. I wouldn't cast them aside, but like in my heart of hearts, it's Bale. What about you? Is it Val Kilmer?
No, I actually think it's Robert Pattinson.
Oh, I know you were a big Batman
I really
fan.
like Robert Pattinson's Batman. I mean, I think Bale's like it's like 1A, 1B with Christian Bale. Like I love Christian Bale. And I also love Val Kilmer too, but I really dug the Robert Pattinson version. That was the one that just sort of like how I've always seen him in my head is kind of like the version that they sort of presented. Like I always kind of saw Batman as more of like this like outsider. Like I never really pictured Bruce Wayne as this like suave guy. Like I know that he puts on that persona, but like that's not really who he is. You know what I mean? He's kind of this kind of like kooky weirdo, you know, and like and I feel like they like, but still like he's badass though. Like, so like just the way that they portrayed that movie, I thought was so cool. And I do love that movie a lot, but I do think Batman Begins is just a better movie, like in general, like overall story wise and stuff. But I do love the Batman. You
know, I hate to say it, I've only watched the Batman one time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but
I've only seen it twice, so
I will watch it again, and I'm looking forward to the sequel. And I loved the Penguin. Did you watch that?
I didn't see the Penguin. No, I heard that was really good.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
So I was a big fan of that. So, yeah. I mean, but yeah, no. I think in my heart of hearts, it's Bale.
Well, another thing that I love about the Robert Pattinson is that I think his Batsuit looked the coolest, and I will stand firm on that. Like I like it might go into our hot take part too, but like I like the long ears on Batman. Like I liked the collar. Like I just thought, and I liked his mask. It just like fit his face better. Like I felt like Ben Affleck's like it like squished his face together and made his cheeks kind of. It's a small thing, but like I feel like that costume did not do him justice. The Batman vs Superman costume, like they could have made it look better.
All right, no, I hear you. What's funny though, when you mentioned kind of the depiction of the character and Bruce in particular and the Batman, I guess kind of on a big picture note here, this is not a groundbreaking take. I think a lot of fans probably subscribe to this, but as far as kind of the different sides of the character, I mean, I definitely look at Bruce in the cave as the truest version of the character, and then elements of disguise in the public facing Bruce Wayne and in Batman, in much the same way as I look at Clark on the farm or Clark in the fortress, like as the purest version of the character, and then elements of disguise in the mild-mannered reporter and Superman.
But would you say it's a valid take to say that Superman in the costume is the same as him in the fortress, as like Batman in the costume is the same as him in the cave? Like, is there a take of that that's like this, like a version of it where it's like that? Because I mean, the Bale version is not. The Bale version, he's like growling and stuff, but like, but say like the Ben Affleck version or the Robert Pattinson version, they're kind of
Yeah,
the
I think
same
that's fair.
guy in the cave as they are in the suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. So we've been hinting at this, or maybe we've already shared a number of quote unquote hot takes.
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, what else do you have on that front? Because it's one of those things, like I always will say to you and we'll say to the guests, this is a safe space, right? And for the audience as well. And the times will come where we'll put out calls for questions from the audience. And it's like, let us know what you think. And like I said before, just such a range of opinion out there that what we might consider a hot take, it's like, no, there are probably other people who feel the same. So I mean, I don't anything else that comes to mind.
Okay, hot take. I like the long ears better than the short ears. I went through this period because of Hush that I thought, no, the short ears are better. But like, ultimately, my heart of hearts think the long ears are cooler. And this might be a hot take too, but like, I'm not saying I don't like the classic costume, the classic like tights with the blue and the gray and the underwear and everything, right? In the comics. But I feel like I've really again, like the last like 5 years or so, I'm really taken to like the more armored look for Batman, like in the movies and stuff. And I feel like it'd be cool to do something like that in the comics where you bring like a more sort of like tactical layered look to a suit. I mean, it'd be harder to draw obviously, but yeah, I think that's because I know like a lot of fans like only want like that classic, like Alex Ross version of the character. And like, I'm just not there. Like I'm cool. I actually prefer like in the live action where they do like the kind of like layered up textured sort of look to him.
Okay. Right on.
Yeah. What about you?
I don't know that I feel so strongly on the visual side of things. I guess I'm pretty open. I don't know that I have kind of heart feelings on that, but yeah, I'm also, if I had any hot takes, I think maybe they've already come out in this discussion. I guess more questions.
Yeah.
And these are some of the things that I'm curious to interrogate and unpack as we move forward in episodes to come. But going back to this idea of the first truth, the saving grace, I was never alone. I mean, that's one of the interesting things because I am quite a fan of the Batman year one iteration of the character.
Mm-hmm.
Did you watch the Cape Crusader animated series, the first season of that?
I did not. No.
But that was very much kind of in that mold and like just stripped down. And it was also more or less set in the 40s, though there were some social anachronisms. But basically it was like a 40s set landscape. And it's just like it's Bruce and Alfred and a blackboard, like it's so stripped down.
Yeah.
So there's something about that I really like, yet I love the Bat family. And one of the things I think we'll end up spending a good amount of time talking about the Robins and Dick Grayson in particular, because I think that's an aspect of this mythology that's undeniable. I mean, Robin bursts onto the scene so early in Batman's publishing history and is there in various incarnations, including as Batman himself at certain points. Such a core aspect of this. And so it's not even so much an internal struggle, but it's just something that I'm always kind of struck by. Like, as much as I like that year one loner, Batman and Alfred sort of thing really stripped down, I do also love the Bat family. So kind of a part of my fandom that's kind of pointing in different directions. Maybe I like stories in both modes, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be binary. It's like, you could like both. That you remind me of a hot take is that I think the hottest of hot takes is that I actually think Nightwing is cooler than Batman. I actually like I think overall, going back to when I was a kid, I think he's just cool. Like he's got those sticks that like the screamer sticks that he uses. Like, I don't know. He just has a really cool visual. Like I really dig Nightwing as a character. And I think I like that he's optimistic. He's kind of got like the Superman personality with like sort of the Batman like edge. And like, I think he's kind of like the prototypical superhero in a lot of ways. So
yeah. I mean, by the way, you did, was it 10 issues too?
I did too. Yeah.
2 issues of Nightwing within the relative recent past as of this recording. And man, I'm a fan of your stuff generally, but man, you knocked it out of the park. Like, it was
thank you so
good
much.
and dynamic. And it was just like, I could see the fun that you were having. And it was cool. You posted some of your, kind of your pencils in progress. And you talked about your approach to drawing Barbara Gordon and using your wife as inspiration. And, I'm so happy that you had that opportunity. Like, it was awesome, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's funny. The Barbara Gordon of it all. It was really funny because, I didn't realize there was like a huge, like, community of fans that like really like Dick Grayson with Barbara Gordon and some that really like him with Corey Starfire.
Oh.
And I didn't even know this was a thing until I drew that picture of Barbara Gordon. And like I had people commenting on her clothes and stuff, and I'm like, I base this off the clothes my wife wears. I'm sorry. Like,
that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess on the one hand, I'm surprised that they were that fired up and vocal, but at the same time, yeah, I guess I'm not surprised that you have these different corners.
Yeah, I mean, I was something that I did not even realize it was like a thing. And like I said, I've read Nightwing consistently like my entire life. So like it's like it just totally like shocked me that way.
Yeah, I guess another less so a hot take, more of a question and more of an instance where I'm a little bit split in myself is it's changed over the years in terms of who murdered the Waynes, and more specifically, whether or not Batman uncovers the killer's identity and brings him to justice or not. So we've had instances where it's Joe Chill and he's caught, or other instances where it's just this nameless, faceless murderer who's out there and kind of represents the crime that's out there in the city and the world. Do you have a preference in approach?
I don't, in the sense that I don't really think it matters in like I get the appeal of both, and I even get the appeal of it being like the Joker or something like in the first Batman movie. Like that's not, but ultimately I don't really think it affects his character all that much in a way that like, I think it's less about who kills his parents. It's more about the fact that his parents got killed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm open to either at the end of the day. And I've experienced both over the years across time and media. I guess there historically for me, there has been an appeal to the notion that the killer is still out there and serves as this representation of the evil in the world. But at the same time, if he's that good of a crime fighter and a detective, he probably would find him. But also it's like, it maybe there's an argument that it diminishes Batman if that's his motivation in some way, shape, or form. Like the killer's still out there. It's like, no, even when the killer is brought to justice, he's still on this quest. Yeah.
Well, I mean, because that's more like, and I think Batman Begins kind of like talks about this a lot, but like, I think it's like a nice little arc for him where it's like, it goes from revenge to being something more than that, right? It's less about, it goes from revenge to protection. Right. And like, and I think in that sense, it doesn't really matter who killed his parents. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the fact that like, it's the fact that they got taken from him and that's what he wants to protect other people from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess similarly, another thing that I wrestle with now, I still want to talk more about gaps in our fandom, but one of mine is the majority of the Scott Snyder New 52 run. Like I read the beginning part, I read Court of Owls and all of that. And I had read the Black Mirror arc that he did with Dick as Batman right before the New 52.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
But I really didn't read the run past Court of Owls. So that's something that is on my list and we'll get to. My understanding though, is that
it's really good.
He has delved into this idea, or has at least talked about this idea. And I'm not saying this as an authority, but this is kind of the general sense, but it points to this question of like whether and to what extent Batman can truly heal his trauma and still continue. And I'm not expecting us to answer this because I think it's a big question, but it's something that I kind of have in my head because it's like, I don't even know how to phrase it, but there's, I think, a fair argument that if you're truly mentally healthy, this path that he's on would not, maybe not necessarily. I mean, although but debatable also, because there are so many other non-powered crime fighters in the DC universe.
Yeah. I mean, because I feel like it really depends on like how psychologically you want to get with it. Like if you want to go really real world, like anybody wearing a costume would be nuts. Like not just Batman, like Green Arrow, all of them, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, but like if you buy into like this world of superheroes and like I'm not quite sure where Scott stands on this, but like, I actually like the idea. Like, I personally think he could heal his trauma and still be Batman because I feel like that's a very aspirational, like optimistic outlook on the whole thing, you know?
Yeah.
Because like at that point, it's like not like kind of like what I said. It's not about just trying to like satisfy this like sadness that he has and try to self-satisfy, but it's more about like being selfless, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like an enlightened way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know where I totally land on this. Like, this is something that I'll continue to ponder because I guess there's a part of me that feels for Batman specifically, for him to do what he does as unrelentingly as he does it, still has to be some level of trauma. But then it becomes a weird thing of like, well, do you not want your beloved character to be able to heal? But then it's like, to what extent can he heal yet still continue on?
Yeah.
Again, it's just kind of an interesting thing, but kind of on this note, and this also circles back to something that we were getting at before when we were talking about kind of the real world applications of Batman Begins and things like that. I feel like, especially when we talk Batman and Superman, that I feel like the word relatable sometimes gets thrown at Batman. Like, well, Batman is more relatable. And I don't think that's ultimately what people mean. I think they mean, and I'm sure there are at some point in my career, I've said relatable with Batman, but I think what we mean is believable in the sense that as unlikely as it is, like, technically speaking, if you had the time, the drive, and the resources, you could conceivably approximate something in the realm of Batman. Whereas, to our knowledge, we don't have aliens from Krypton with powers on them, right? But as far as actual relatability, no, I find Superman vastly more relatable. He's a guy who was raised with good values by his parents and tries to be a friend and help people.
Yeah. I mean, but I think it depends on like your approach to Batman though, because I feel like there is a version of Batman that can be like hyper relatable. Like if you sort of delve into Bruce as a person, I feel like that might be one of my hot takes, is that I do feel like a lot of stories kind of almost like glaze over Bruce. You know what I mean? Like, it's so much of it is just like Batman, the mission and that, right? And like, there's not a lot of character, like Bruce doesn't have a lot of character development, like in general, so that could be like a hot take that I would like to see explored more, or a version of Bruce that's like, you get a little more of him as a person. You know what I mean? Like, what does he like to do? Like, where, like, give him a love interest, like things that could like layer on, like on top of just this sort of cipher of a guy who is like just unrelenting badass, But I think that's why I tend in general to think of him as less relatable, because he is more just like, he's like a badass that kicks ass, like that's kind of like his thing,
Kind of on that note, kind of speaking to a big picture, central idea here of what it is about the character that resonates with us. And I said this in my trailer for the podcast, but that single-minded devotion to an ideal, the fact that he was able to take the worst thing that could happen to someone.
Yeah.
This pain, this violent loss of his parents at such an early age, and channel that into something that helps other people, and to acquire and inspire these family members around him.
Yeah.
It's just genuinely compelling.
Well, I mean, I think that the best of these characters are ones that you can sort of boil down to like, what does it mean? Right. Like what's the moral, what's the position of it. Right. And like, when we've talked about Green Lantern in the past, like my opinion on Green Lantern is like it's a metaphor for like your willingness to do things is the most powerful weapon in the universe. Right. And like, and I think that's a really good message for people, right? And similarly with Batman, I think the message with Batman is you can take what you think is like a really, really extreme negative, and you can turn it around into an extreme positive. And like through like your own action and through your perspective and like your willingness to try. And like, I think that's something that is really core to like the popularity of the character in general, and like why he resonates so much with people. And I think when we talk about relatability, I think that's it, to be honest with you. I think it's like when you go to the gym, people wearing Batman t-shirts, it's like, it's inspiring you to do better. Right. And I think that's where it's not so much like the story of the character or like what he's doing or fighting the Joker. It's more the idea of being able to take hardship and turn it into positive, like actionable, like good things for your life,
Yeah. Well said. So another story that has been important to me in my Batman fan journey is whatever happened to the Caped Crusader. Now, there have been rather horrific allegations about the writer of that work, so I'll kind of leave that there. But that story really made a massive impression on me. And it's a quote unquote final story a la whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, but it becomes more of this psychedelic metaphysical journey in the afterlife rather than a kind of more plot-based final story. But it gets at this core idea. Spoiler alert, but we get this afterlife conversation between Bruce and Martha, summing up like what this is all about. And he talks about how he's like, I'm the Batman. I protect the innocent. I correct the guilty. And like, he sees it all now. And he's like, at some point I'm going to fall, and it might be some grand death saving somebody, or I might just get taken out through some silly mistake, whatever it might be. But I do this for as long as I can until I drop. And the only reward he gets for being Batman is he gets to be Batman. Yeah. And he gets these few years at the beginning before all of that. And that's how we end on this kind of notion of rebirth, and just the cycle continues, and which I think is meant to sort of speak to the ongoing cyclical nature of publishing, right? These stories are always going to continue.
Yeah.
But just that idea of this perpetual battle until he drops, however he drops, it doesn't matter. Although obviously different ways to look at it. You take the ending of something like The Dark Knight Rises, and it's like, no, that puts a different spin on what his end could be. So different ways to interpret it, but that whatever happened to the Caped Crusader always made a big impression and elicited an emotional response from me. And in a similar way to Batman Begins, as far as, actually, I never really put this together, but kind of how Batman Begins crystallized the inception of what he's about and why he's doing this. Caped Crusader kind of did the same thing to me for the end, and kind of like what becomes of him in the end.
Gotcha. I read that when it first came out, but I can't remember much of it. I do remember Andy Kubert drew it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Beautiful art. So, so we have that. I guess maybe one more of these hot take questions. And this is something like we'll talk more about this. Not trying to pin you down here, but the Joker. Yeah. Right now, obviously, this is not something that we've even really hit on hard in this premiere episode. But one of the all-time rogues galleries in all of superhero mythology. Fantastic, and Joker, leading the charge on that front. The idea of Batman's unwillingness to put a permanent end to the Joker, I think, is kind of an interesting question, and maybe more specifically, I don't know how much experience you have with the Killing Joke in particular. But
I've read it once a long time ago. I don't have much memory.
So you might not have a take on this, but does Batman kill the Joker at the end of it?
I don't remember it enough to have a take either way. Yeah.
Fair enough. It's one of those things where no, I mean, obviously Joker continues to appear in Batman comics after that. So strictly, literally no. But I think in terms of what the intention of that story was, Grant Morrison has this great bit about it on one of Kevin Smith's old podcasts where he's like, it's the Killing Joke. Like, he kills him at the end. Like, that's the thing. Anyway, so I've talked about it before. We'll talk about it more. But
do you have a strong opinion on Batman's like no kill rule?
So this is a tricky, but I'm glad we're hitting on this here, because I think this is one of these big things. I wouldn't want to leave this on the table for our first episode, because I think it is important. So generally, and obviously this is not limited to Batman. We see this with other superheroes as well. Yeah. Whether or not they'll kill, and especially in the case of Batman, who has this hard line that he won't, in modern stories, right? Obviously we have Golden Age stories where he's shooting and killing people, but generally it's not something he does. Overall, I'm okay with it. I think Joker really is such an extreme example that it gets a little bit harder to kind of reconcile why he wouldn't. Obviously he can't, because Joker's too valuable a character. We have to have Joker in play, but I do think then it gets trickier. There's one of the Kevin Smith Batman miniseries that he did, going back to Kevin Smith, drove me crazy, because it was a story that involved Onomatopoeia, the villain that he created for Green Arrow. Was
it the Widening Gyre?
Yeah.
That's what it was, yeah.
It was that one, or Cacophony. I forget which one this happened in, but there's a scene where I think Onomatopoeia has shot the Joker, and they're on a rooftop, and then Onomatopoeia leaves. And rather than go after this serial killer, Batman stays, because he won't let Joker die from the wounds inflicted by Onomatopoeia. And that, to me, is a bridge too far. It's like, okay, I get that you're not going to strangle this guy. Yeah. But if someone else shoots him and the choice is save Joker or stop this other kid, it's like, come on, that's where it's, I can't get on board with that. That's too far for me.
My opinion on it is like, I mean, I agree with everything you just said. I feel like I get why that, again, you're right. The publishing, like, he's too valuable of a character to kill. Right. But like, I do think like, I don't want Batman just killing people like Punisher, but like, if there's like this like epic battle that he's in, and like kind of like the whole Superman Zod thing, like I don't really have a problem. Like, it's not like he's like murdering someone. It's like I feel like there's a difference between like a death in combat versus like he's like executing someone. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And like, again, I don't want him like killing people because I don't want superheroes to kill people, but like at the same time, like it's, I don't know. I have this sort of like if they did tell a story with it was the end of the Joker and Batman ended up killing him, like I wouldn't have a problem with it. You know what I mean? It wouldn't bother me, you know, like.
Well, to use another example, not Joker, but Ra's al Ghul at the end of Batman Begins. I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you.
Yeah.
Remember, I was like, you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I
remember my theater like whooped at that. They clapped and whooped at that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the last thing on the Joker for now is I go back to Under the Red Hood, and I might be conflating the animated adaptation with the comic, or it might be in both, or it might be in one, but both were written by Judd Winnick either way. So the point stands. But the returned Jason Todd, now the Red Hood, is really taking Batman to task for not stopping the Joker permanently. And look, there's a case to be made with a villain that heinous, that irredeemable, who proves time and again he can't be contained.
Yeah.
But coming from Jason, the line is something to the effect of like, I get why you wouldn't kill, but couldn't you make an exception for him for what he did to me? Yeah. And so that's the thing about it that it's not even that I'm like, no, he definitely should. I enjoy the question and the debate. And especially when you get it from that perspective of Jason Todd, of like, how could you not make a one-time exception for this? By the way, one-time exception, going back to Final Crisis, that's a moment that I love when, I don't know if you read or if you remember.
When he shoots the gun.
When he shoots Darkseid, he's like, I made a vow to never use guns, but I'm going to make a once-in-a-lifetime exception for you. Oh.
Yeah, so good.
So in an extreme circumstance.
Yeah,
I think.
But like also that notion, the whole notion about Batman with the Joker too, it's also a little ridiculous because like if you're really extrapolating out to the real world, like Batman would capture him once and then like the state would like put the death penalty on him. You know what I mean? True. It's not like he wouldn't be breaking out of jail. Like, you know, like these notions of like, you know, you see like I love Sean Murphy, but the
White Knight,
when Joker's like escaped on like a moped thing, I'm like, this is like, this is so not real. You know what I mean? Like, and like you go into it knowing it's like zany comic book stuff, but like if you're living in the world of zany comic books, I feel like it's hard to then apply real world logic to things like that. You know what I mean?
I gotcha. So we've been hitting on this idea of gaps, and maybe we've already shared some of ours, but like we said, we're coming almost a century of this character. Inevitably, there are going to be things we haven't read or watched or listened to or played, you know, video games, things like that. But I guess for you, what are the gaps that feel the most significant for you personally that you're like, hey, at some point I gotta read or watch this?
Well, I mean, right now it's absolute Batman because I just have not had time to keep up with books, and I hear it's like amazing. So I definitely am really excited at some point to jump into that. I'm trying to think like beyond like, well, I mean, what about you? And I'll see if I can think of some other things.
Yeah. So, I mean, a few things come to mind. I mean, some of them are very minor, and I wouldn't really, I don't know that I even put them on the list necessarily, but like the 1940s serials, like I own them.
Oh,
the
wow,
movie serials, but I haven't watched them. But no, something like the Adam West series, like I've seen a few episodes. Once again, at my grandparents' house, I have this memory of watching them, but that's not something I have immersed myself in.
Yeah.
So that's a gap now.
Yeah, what's interesting you say that because I told you my earliest memory was the movie, but I've never seen any of the shows. I've only ever seen the movie. And my wife's dad, my father-in-law, to him, Batman is only the Adam West stuff. Okay. He thinks that the serious take is like, he's like, this is like they saw the Batman. He's like it's a good movie, but this is like ridiculous to take this seriously. He's just a guy in a cape. Like why? Like, you know, that's like his mentality on it. So it's so funny. He's like, no, you gotta go back to the roots of the character. He's like, he's a cartoon comic book. He's like Bugs Bunny. And I'm like, that's not what he is now. Like, you know, but he grew up, you know, in that era. So it's just funny, the different takes.
It's amazing because, right, like once again, analytically, we can look at Batman 66 and recognize like, man, like what a show in terms of keeping the character alive, albeit in a different way, but really contributing to the longevity of the character. So there's a lot to be said for it. I'll get to it at some point. It's one of those things I feel like even a few years ago, I probably would have had a hard time getting into it or maybe would have been even dismissive of it. I feel like I'm at a good place in my fandom now of being able to look at it for what it is, the audience it spoke to at the time, and not get too hung up on how it's not my Batman.
Well, now though with your son, because he really likes Power Rangers, I feel like it's totally kind of the same vein. Like would he be into watching it with you? Like
I mean, maybe I could try. I did at one point. I picked up the Filmation Batman cartoons on Blu-ray.
Filmation.
And they're from the 60s, and we put them on. I put them on the TV, and he was into it. So
is that the one that like crossed over with Scooby-Doo, like that style? Like the one that looked like Scooby-Doo-esque?
Maybe. I didn't dive in too deeply, so don't hold me to it. But anyway, so the Adam West show, like that's something that I know, not unlike Batman 89, like that was the gateway for so many people.
Yeah.
But it's funny that you talk about your father-in-law, like Batman begins and ends with Adam West.
Yeah.
We've talked about this. I mean, I've experienced that sentiment on the Superman side from the George Reeves fans, like folks who grew up in the 50s, 60s, like watching George Reeves, that's Superman.
Yeah.
And the character begins and ends with him. So, I recognize how important it is for certain portions of the fandom, but that's definitely, I would say that's a gap. I mean, more recently, like I said, I have not finished the Scott Snyder New 52 run. I've only hit really the beginning part of the Tom King Rebirth run. So those are like two
I've got
big years long runs.
That's when I got to read it because I read like the first chunk, like the David Finch stuff, but then once Finch left, I kind of drifted off and I just never got back to it. So that also coincides with like the busier I got with work. It's kind of like a spoiler alert for people who don't work in the industry, but like as a professional artist, like the time to read comics kind of shrinks because it just feels like work. And that's why I haven't read a lot of this modern stuff now. It's not because I'm not interested. It's like, I've heard great things about all this stuff. It just, when I'm done drawing, I just kind of feels like more work. So I got to like step back,
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll also say in terms of pre-crisis reading, and this is not limited to Batman, it's a sea of material out there that I have not experienced, but there too, I've gotten good on my Superman journey of really being able to kind of approach those stories in a way where I get enjoyment out of them, even though I recognize that the storytelling sensibilities are not really mine per se.
Yeah.
But I can appreciate them from what they were. So that's an area. And I think that Black Case book will be kind of a nice segue into looking at some classic pre-crisis Batman stories that have relevance to the Morrison run that I love.
Did you ever read the Marshall Rogers stuff?
No.
With like Silver St. Cloud and because I've heard that's really good. I heard that was like almost like everyone says Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil was like the start of gritty Batman, but a lot of people point to that one as like actually the start of it.
Yeah, so all of that is on the list, but as of now, like I said, the vast majority of that pre-crisis material will be new. But I would say for me personally, what I consider the biggest gap that I can't believe is a gap that I got to close is I have never read in full Nightfall, the Nightfall saga.
I never have either. In full. Are you talking like all the way through? Yeah. So I've read where he gets his back broken, but I've never read the entirety of when Azrael takes over as Batman.
Yeah, and the reason why I say for me personally, it's like I can't believe is that the death and return of Superman looms so large for me. And so to have a year-ish later, the Batman equivalent of that, you would have expected either back in the day as it was coming out, or at least in the years since that I would have gravitated to it. Now, in my defense, when I said I didn't read it in full, I did have for a time, since I sold them in one of my purges, but I did have a series of collected editions that they did, but it wasn't complete. Like in the years since, they've done omnis and they've done like thicker books that really collect everything.
Yeah.
Nightfall, Night Quest, Night's End, all of it. So what I read was kind of, I think, a more stripped down piecemeal version of it. So I've read some of it, and certainly I read the seminal issue where Bane breaks his back, but I really do want to really truly dive into that full event. And as of this recording, we are anticipating, I think it's a quartet of animated adaptations. I think it's 3 to 4 movies.
Oh, Jeremy Adams is writing that, right?
I think so.
I think he is. Yeah.
So I think that'll be a good opportunity to kind of put that all together. So that's the one. It's not the only gap, but it's the one where it's like, I gotta get to this.
Yeah. No, I mean, I do. Also, how cool does that Azrael Batman suit look? Like that is like one of the best bat suits. I love it. The claws and like the wings and stuff. So dope.
Yeah. What have we not talked about that you want to talk about in this premiere episode here about our fandom?
Undiscovered gems. That was one of the things.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Do you have any? Do you have any like not talked about gems that people like or that people don't talk about enough?
I know I gave that to you as a talking point, and you would think I would have something in mind. I don't know if there's anything that's immediately jumping out. What do you have?
I have one. It's called Batman Hong Kong. Did you ever read that?
No.
It came out in 2003. And I didn't read it when it came out, but like around 2014, my parents, my mom went to my comic book store up to where they live. And they're like, "Want to get my son a Christmas present, blah, blah." And the guy who owned the store, Scott, shout out to Scott. He was like, "Oh, I think he'll like this." And it was a trade of that, Batman Hong Kong. And like I said, it came out in 2003. So it's old. I don't even know if it's still in print, but it's Doug Mensch wrote it and this artist named Tony Wong drew it. And it's like very like, it's like manga Batman, but like, it's like this cool mystery. It's like Batman goes to Hong Kong and there's like he's chasing a serial killer that's using the internet to like create like snuff films essentially, but he's putting it online and Batman's chasing him. And there's also a Chinese vigilante called the Night Dragon who's like also on the case. And it's like I said, new character, really cool art. And it's like something that no one ever talks about. I'm like, this is like a badass Batman story that's like definitely worth checking out because again, really great art, really fun, a classic Batman writer with Doug Munch. And yeah, definitely, I highly recommend it.
Right on.
Good mystery.
So I don't know how much this really falls into the category of underrated gems, but I will say on the television side, you and I are both massive Smallville fans. Back in the day on the WB, we had a short-lived 13-episode Birds of Prey series. And I've probably forgotten more than I remember about the show, but I'll always remember that tattoo song, all the things she said playing during that climactic final battle in what turned out to be the series finale. And I own it on DVD.
Was Batman in it?
Well, it's like you do see a stunt double in the costume in the very beginning.
Like he exists in the world.
He exists in the world, but it's like he's left Gotham or what's now New Gotham.
Gotcha.
But then, spoiler alert, at the very end, you find out that Alfred's in contact with him and like he's keeping tabs on the Birds of Prey. So he exists in the world, even though
he's not really in the show. Yeah.
And it's like you see quote unquote Joker, but it's Mark Hamill does the voice. Mm-hmm. Just in the very beginning. Yeah. But so that one, I have a soft spot for Birds of Prey. And then once again, I don't know how underrated this maybe it is, but the Gotham TV series, did you watch?
I watched the first season. Okay. That was it. Yeah. So pretty good. I thought it was, I wish there was more Bruce Wayne in it. And that kid was fine, serviceable for what they did, but I wish there was more of a Smallville approach where like Bruce was the main character. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, so I watched it all the way through live. My wife and I watched it, and I'm a big OC fan, so to have Ben McKenzie as Gordon,
he was
I'm like,
great.
all right, this is good. And there were different areas of the show. There were times where they really leaned more into the quote unquote the monsters, and I don't know that served the show well. I liked when it was a little bit more on the organized crime side. I thought the stuff they did with quote unquote their Joker was really strong. But I agree with you, and that's kind of my overall assessment of Gotham is that I feel like it should have been either a true like Bruce Wayne Smallville-esque origin story, or it should have been like straight up Gotham Central.
Yeah.
Where Batman already exists in the world. You don't see him. Maybe you see Bruce, but you don't see Bat. However they want to spin it, right?
Like Birds of Prey thing where you see like a stunt double in the suit kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. But they ended up doing quasi origin story, quasi Gotham Central. And I feel like they really kind of should have picked one
or the other.
So that's one. It's not, for me, it's not the Batman equivalent of Smallville, which is a huge pillar of my Superman fandom, but it is something that I enjoyed. And we'll give it a shout out.
Did you watch Titans by any chance?
Only a couple of episodes.
Okay, because I've only seen the first season and change. Like I saw, I think maybe like half of season 2, and I just kind of drifted off. Like I do want to get to it eventually, but I think their interpretation of Robin in that was like really strong.
Yeah,
yeah.
One of the things I want to say, obviously, I've invoked Superman many times over the course of this. I do want to say my intention with this podcast isn't, the hook of it is not Batman through the eyes of a Superman fan. Like that's not what this is. I want to give Batman the same treatment and the same spotlight we've given Superman. Inevitably, I will make comparisons to Superman because that's such a natural touchstone for me. But at the same time, my intention is for this not to be a ton of Superman talk because I have another place for that. So really focusing on Batman. We're going to be putting episodes out on a monthly basis. I was saying to you off mic, there might come a point where we kind of ramp it up a little bit, but I rather under promise and over deliver and do like bonus episodes here and there. I don't want to overcommit. So we're going to start on a monthly release schedule and really be hitting, like I said, those tent poles in my fandom, things that I've overlooked, things that I didn't like and I want to take another look at. We're going to have a mix of guests. You'll be back down the road, of course. And yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to get into this. Now, for people listening, you're either listening on the dedicated Lighting the Bat Signal feed, and hopefully you are subscribed, or if you haven't yet, hit subscribe now. Or if you are already a subscriber to Digging for Kryptonite, you might be seeing this in your Digging for Kryptonite feed, because I do have the ability to cross-post, and I want to make sure all of our Digging for Kryptonite audience members know about this.
Nice.
But I would say either way, please make sure you are subscribed to the dedicated Lighting the Bat Signal feed. And I want to say, for all of our Digging for Kryptonite, or even my comic shop history audience members, throwing it all the way back to my first podcast, if you've come over from the other shows, really, really appreciate it. And if you're new, if you've never listened to the other stuff, maybe you don't like Superman, but you're curious about Batman, there's no shortage of Batman podcasts. I mean, it's funny. There are other Superman podcasts, obviously, and I'm friends with all those guys. We have a great community. It's not a ton of Superman podcasts. I feel like there are vastly more Batman podcasts. At least that's my sense. So if you're choosing to spend time, listening to us, we really appreciate it.
This is going to be the best Batman podcast.
Well, we're going to have a lot of fun. And I'm really excited to just kind of, get into this each month,
Yeah, man. I'm so happy you had me here for the first episode. I really feel honored. Like I said, I've always appreciate when you ask me to come on. So I'm super excited to, as a listener, to go on this journey with you,
No, I appreciate that. And, we mentioned you drawing Batman, professionally. I know we talked about Nightwing a little bit, but I mean, just as we kind of wind down here on a personal note, it's like when you had the opportunity to draw Batman for the first time,
so stressful.
Was Trinity the first time?
Trinity was the first official. Yeah.
So not only it's Batman, but Superman and Wonder Woman. But I mean, what's the mixture of, like you said, maybe a little nerve wracking, but also I must imagine tremendously exciting.
So nerve wracking, man. Yeah. Cause I kept going. That was right when Rebirth started. So they were really on top of making sure everyone was trying to draw on model for the Rebirth costumes and stuff. And, but I was always trying to get my own little thing into it, but I also was trying to draw Jim Lee too. And I was very locked up on that. I didn't know how long I want to do the ears, so I feel like I've since, definitely got more of a look now that I want for Batman. But yeah, it was very fun, but also incredibly stressful at the same time. Yeah.
No, but that's awesome that you've had the opportunity to do that. What else do you want to share with folks about your work and your projects?
So let me see here. I got a bunch of covers coming out on a bunch of different things. I can't really talk about a lot though right now.
Well, where's the best place that people, if they want to keep up with you?
Yeah. If you follow me on Instagram at V Ken Marion, and on Twitter or X at VK Marion. And I'm posting all my stuff there. Like I said, some of the projects that I'm working on, I can't really talk about too much, but what I can say, I've got a Kyle Rayner story in Green Lantern 600 that's coming out in March, or not March. We're in March right now. I don't know what's coming out, but you can pre-order at your local comic book shop, Green Lantern 600. Really excited about that. And I've got my own creator-owned book, Chronicle Sol-Stryker, that I'm still working on. And you can buy issue 1 on Indiegogo right now. Hopefully we'll have our own website up soon so you can buy it directly from us. And work on issue 2 for that. And I've got like 3 projects that are kind of like in the fire that I can't talk about, but I really want to. And one of them, the audience of this show would probably really be excited about, but let's just say more for later. All
right. Let's see if I can find out off mic. But no, thank you so much for joining me. Really, it's always an honor to have you here, kicking off another podcast series. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate it, like I said. And I'm hoping for a long and successful podcast with you for this.
I appreciate that. Thank you, audience, so much. Thank you for joining us for this premiere episode. Batman made a solemn vow on the grave of his parents, and similarly, we make a promise to deliver the best podcast that we can to you each month. So I hope that you will subscribe to Lighting the Bat Signal. Keep coming back each month. I want to give a shout out to my buddy Ralph Puma, whose band Kill Me Kate supplied our intro and outro music. Big fan of Ralph and his music. And a shout out to our cover artist, Isaiah Simmons. Make sure you give him a follow on social media. He's done art for other projects of mine as well. Really cool stuff. So thank you to those guys. Thank you, audience. Make sure you keep coming back. And until then, remember, it's not who you are underneath, but what you do that defines you. Support the show and receive exclusive content by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. Rewards include our DCU spinoff podcast, advanced listens, sponsorship opportunities, and more. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please rate and review the podcast via your platform of choice, subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media Links are in the show notes. Flat Squirrel Podcast is also home to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, a long-running weekly series mining Superman's vast mythology across time and media. Subscribe today. Lighting the Bat Signal is a Flat Squirrel production. Key art by Isaiah Simmons and theme music by Kill Me Kate.